How do you deal with awkward interview subjects? Hmm. That would depend on awkward in which way. Because there's some people who just panic when they're in front of a camera, they get really quiet, you can't get them to relax, they have a little bit of a deer in the headlights, they just give monosyllabic answers. That's one kind of awkward. There's other people who can't stop moving. I think my camera is moving right now. People who are doing this sort of thing and they can't sit still and they're waving their hands around, like, that's a completely different kind of awkward. It awkward depends on a few things. I would say I'll take this in the sense of somebody who's a little uncomfortable, and I'm very particular about when I point out people's weird tics to them. We'll take this in that direction. Especially, like, I occasionally say ums, which are annoying. My big word is "so." If I have a weird pause, I'll go, "So," and it's a thing that I try to stop myself from doing. Different people have different, like, little words that they throw in. Most of the time it's, but it's not always. It's just weird little vocal things people do when they're thinking, it's just sort of taking up time. Sometimes if you point that out to people, it actually makes it worse. Like, they start to panic, they're trying not to say, they're trying not to say "so," they're trying not to say, and if you tell them that, they'll actually get worse about it, and the more frantic they get, the more uncomfortable they get, the more that they say it. Other people, if you say that, they'll take it in and they'll pause a little bit more and they'll kinda stop saying the word. Really depends on the person, depends on how well you know them, depends on how much time they've been in front of a camera, and it depends on if they're just sort of free forming their answers or if they're reading a teleprompter or if it's somewhere in between, they're reading up bullet points. You have to it's difficult to find the balance between trying to get them to stop doing the thing that you want them to stop doing, whether that's using their hands too much, whether that's saying some weird word. If they're supposed to be looking at the camera and they're kind of doing this sort of thing, that you're gonna have to stop and go, I will need you to look at the camera." So there are things that you have to not let them get away with. There's other things that you have to be more careful with, especially with the weird, verbal diarrhea, like me doing the ums and the so's all the time. Eh, Patience, patience, and knowing if it's a small thing and pointing it out is gonna make it worse, then just let it go, because if you point it out and it gets worse, you've gotten yourself nowhere. What is the most difficult video shoot you have put together? I would have to say one of the jet ski trips. That was difficult in the, because of just how massive it was. We did one particular trip where we went from I'm trying to remember if it was New York or DC, in a car. They're only a couple hours apart for anybody who doesn't know that. They're pretty close to each other. I think it no, I think our plan was New York, but I think we started in DC. So we went from DC all the way down the coast, all the way down to Miami. So I would say that was probably the biggest trip that we did, and it was just the logistics of that. Cameras, jet skis, boats, follow vehicles, fuel stops, hotel, food, setting up media stops along the way with local TV stations, keeping people updated, doing the social media, navigating the actual water itself, like with the GPS and making sure that the skiers knew where it was that they were supposed to go. How many forks do you come into when you're on the intracoastal waterway? How many forks do you come to? Which ones do you take a left at? Which ones do you take a right at? Navigating. We'll have to go to how many times have I been stopped by the police while filming? We'll go into that in a different discussion. How to navigate on a jet ski past a naval base and not get stopped by the police. I would say that placing cameras, charging cameras, getting the footage back, editing everything all together, like, that from beginning to end, checklists, putting together checklists, keeping everything. I mean, a laminator is my best friend during that whole trip, keeping everything that dry. Like, you just physically can't do things with paper if you're literally in the water. Uh, I would definitely say that is probably the most complicated, the most difficult, the most time-consuming shoots, to put together was some of our as our shoots and our trips were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and a lot of that really was just navigating the water, navigating the follow vehicles, and dealing with, local TV stations and media stops and that sort of thing. It was big, it was complicated, it was a lot of fun, and it was frequently cold because we, for some stupid reason, kept taking our jet skis out when it was snowing. But I mean, that's our fault for being idiots, uh, or just being with Marines and they think that whole thing is fun. So, All right. Thank you so much. That was another fun conversation. I answered quite a few different questions. We'll do this at least a couple more times, see how these go. If you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them on the video down below. You can also contact the Creator Shift podcast. Follow me there